4, 3, 2, you're on.
All right, it's setting it up right now. All right, hello. Looks like we are live. So welcome to Nothing on Air. My name is Noel, and I am pleased today to have our guest, Andrew Hewson. Andrew, so good to see you. The format that we'll use is, Andrew, I'm going to read a quick bio, tell people a little bit about you. We'll have you do a short talk of whatever comes up. And then we have people on Zoom. We also have people on streams on the various channels, and people can ask questions either via chat or if they're here in Zoom, they can ask their questions live. Does that work for you?
Sounds good.
All right, perfect. So good to have you.
Yeah, good to be with you.
Andrew is a contemporary spiritual speaker whose focus is on the realization of divinity as one's fundamental reality, emphasizing transcendence as a process that could not only be undergone in the midst of daily living, but even facilitated by it. Andrew speaks from the experiential reality of having been carried by the grace of total transcendence in the context of daily life. Beautifully stated. Andrew, good to have you. I'll turn it over to you for now.
All right. Thanks, Noel. It's good to be with you. Yeah, so I suppose I'll just start by saying that what we're joined in here today, of course, is always beyond words. But at the same time, speaking spontaneously arises. It's a part of the naturalness of the expression of what we truly are. So although the words are not the reality, they are playfully used to point to what is ever immediate. I hadn't really even heard of the term non-duality until probably about 3 years ago. And by the time I heard of non-duality, it was already blossoming forth as a direct recognition of what this is, of what reality is. That being said, I seem to start, as we all seem to start, seemingly feeling like I was a separate individual person with a fragmented life in space and time that had problems and had pleasures and all of those different things. Whenever I speak about the recognition of what I actually is, I always put it within the context of grace. And when I use the term grace, it doesn't mean something that is given by a God out there. I mean an ever-present activating factor, an ever-present activating principle, something that is inherently here, always. Grace is what allows us to apparently be exploring the unexplorable subject of this truth together. Grace is what provides the divine discontent that draws us into seeing what is actually seeing. That being said, of course, nothing caused the sense of separation to seem to fall away. There's nothing contained within the realm of form that can bring anything about. At the same time, what we're really looking at is just a matter of clarity, a matter of seeing what is ultimately already clear. what is already here right now, speaking to itself, expressing itself as the appearance of this meeting. I feel that it's always important to recognize what it is that is realizing itself. It's never the seeming individual. It's never someone that sees something. So what is it that is seeing? What is it that is awakening? And some would say that perhaps there's nothing awakening, and that has an accuracy to it. We could use a word like awareness is awakening. Consciousness is awakening. There are various possibilities, and from where I'm coming from, these are not necessarily all the same. They are and they aren't. There are distinct recognitions of what this is, distinct qualitative recognitions of infinity, we might say. So there are aspects that can appear to be dominant in this unfoldment of the truth of our divinity. And that's another word that I tend to use quite often, is divinity. Not always the most popular word. But here, divinity doesn't mean some sort of corporeal God or some sort of otherness at all. Divinity points to the only reality, the truth of what I always is, the I that you are and the I that I am. So whenever we are speaking about awakening, which is not something that I really speak about a lot as something, because I feel like it tends to be interpreted as a happening, like something that's going to happen in space or time. And sometimes it can show up that way. You know, there's a distinct day where it became very clear that this is always here, that this is always what has been seeming to experience itself as this play of name and form. But I tend to favor the understanding of a devotion that is sort of perpetually in process, yet always complete. So the process aspect appears to be referential to the seeming expressed values of experience. You know, our reflection of what has been recognized within the midst of daily activity, we might say. And the completeness is what is always appearing to perpetually express itself in this ever-refining process. The question might arise when I use the term devotion. Well, who is devoted and to what? And the simple answer to this is that there doesn't have to be anyone in particular in order for there to be devotion. Just like there doesn't have to be someone eating a bowl of cereal in order for the bowl of cereal appear to be eaten. Devotion can be the spontaneous expression of this isness, just flowing within itself. And it's committed to itself. It's committed to the realization of itself. It's committed to the fullness of the reflection of itself. So if we were to use a term like awakening, the question then arises, and then what? You know, So there's this recognition that there is no separation, there is no individual me here, and there is no individual other there, that there's only this field of reality, there's only this full, yet completely and utterly vacant truth that is shining as all of this. But then what seems to follow that? Because there is still this human expression, there is still this play of apparent life that seems to be unfolding. So the limited dualistic mind tends to think in terms of addition and subtraction, gain and loss, cause and effect. All of these separation-based processes. Yeah. And when it comes to a subject like awakening, the same mind, the same limited apparent mind, seems to apparently interpret it in terms of gain and loss. It seems to look at it as something that promises something. And of course, that tends to be a promise in the future, something that's going to come. And that can, even within the realm of non-dual languaging, the promise of what's to come is seeing that there's no me, right? The seeing that there's no separation. That's the prize. That's the possibility. That's what may be in store. And no matter how many times it's said that that's not it, it tends to still be in place that way. There tends to still be this sort of expectation or anticipation. But what's interesting is that oftentimes after that recognition shines forth in an obviousness that is always here, always clear, and recognizes that the whole seeming projection of there being a possibility at another point was just playing itself out in the field of our truth, in the field of what is always the completeness. Yeah. There can be some seeming discrepancies between what we have recognized reality to be, what reality has recognized itself to be, if you don't feel comfortable with the word we, yeah, and what seems to be unfolding, because largely this planet is stratified in different degrees of the illusion of separation. So, everything seems to be centered around this sense that there are separate individuals with their own personal things and their own personal projects and their own personal problems and so on and so forth. So what I found can potentially take place is sort of a new, subtler form of separation could possibly develop between the recognition that there is no central operator, there is no central individual self experience or knower, and the sense of that being the case in those around us. Yeah. So I feel that it's very important to have a comprehensive picture of what this unfoldment is going to look like, and that includes the practical level of how we can more effectively and efficiently be with a greater harmony in the midst of experiencing, the experiencing that appears to continue, and the experiencing which includes the recognized false sense of separation. Oftentimes in those that we love, those that are close to us or have been close to us. And of course, the story of personal relationships is being undone in the sense that the specialness that seemed to be associated with the sense of me is removed, and so therefore it's not as if, this relationship is somehow better than this relationship. Not necessarily. There can still be residue, and that's another important piece. So approaching it from the understanding that yes, there's nothing to be gained. There's nothing to be figured out. What is already here, right here, this immediate, consciously present, pure awareness, this truth of what is timelessly perceiving is already complete, already full, already whole. Nothing can be altered in it. It's unalterable. But at the same time, the seeming still seems to seem. The appearances still appear to appear. So a perspective which includes the seeming, includes the appearances, I feel is one that could be termed integrated, one that could be termed, supportive within the realm of the possibility of really witnessing the fullness of that peace and that joy and that bliss that is bubbling forth, make its way into all areas of human life. So awakening, and then what? Yeah, that's the question. I found that actually that initial recognition that there is no separate individual is just the beginning. And so in the teaching that appears to come through here, which is not a teaching in the typical kind of understanding of the term, yeah, but it's a body of information, a body of knowledge, which is potentially supportive, yet has no causal value within the realm of what is appearing, because there is no causality, because there is no duality. There are not two things. So nothing can cause anything because there's only one reality. In that a body of information, there's a certain sort of understanding of different stages or different qualitative recognitions of reality and the status of infinity. And this is not something that was learned or heard, but something that directly unfolded here and is directly unfolding in those that I have the honor and the privilege of being in communion with in the midst of this graced unfoldment. Yeah. So that's one very important piece, I would say. It has the potential, of course, to be a limitation if it's taken on as something that it isn't, but so does saying that there's nothing to do and nowhere to go and no one to see anything. That can also be a limitation if it's mistaken, if it's taken on just as an idea or just as a concept and regurgitated or used not to look at certain things that are arising, so on and so forth. There's all kinds of potential limitations there. So recognizing that the initial shift, which is oftentimes characterized by the recognition of the absence of substantial, any sort of substantial sense of separation, any sort of individual entity, any sort of validity within the realm of conceptualization in terms of things were being called something, but that's not really what they are, because that's just a name, it's a label, it's a concept, it's an abstraction of reality, and so we see that, and that's kind of that not knowing, stage, walking into not knowing and falling into that space of just, the nakedness of the innocence of being, innocence of seeing, without all of the false knowledge, without all the false understanding. And that doesn't imply that there's a true knowledge within the realm of form, within the realm of language, but there is a knowledge which is nonverbal. There's a knowledge which is beyond concepts, a non-conceptual knowledge. And that can express itself with greater or lesser degrees of clarity within the realm of language. Yeah. So it's kind of this interesting play, you know, recognizing, yes, it's all the same, it's all this, but at the same time, there are certain things that appear to be more or less aligned with the recognition that there's only this, you know. There are certain things that definitely seem to be more aligned with the illusion of separation. Yeah. So having this initial insight is really what I would consider to be the beginning of a new, infinite, yet always complete, timeless, perpetual process of playful unfoldment, you know, within this one infinite mind, within this one infinite field of conscious awareness. And there's a lot of possibilities there. You know, one thing that I sort of am consistently emphasizing is that the residue of the illusion of separation and the illusion of limitation and the illusion of lack doesn't just disappear when we see that there isn't someone here in the way that there seemed to be. There's still a personality, you know, like a seeming personality, but there isn't a separate person. Yeah. So the residue that was accumulated in that illusion of separation and that illusion of limitation and that illusion of lack doesn't just disappear. And the reason it doesn't just disappear is because it's been impressed within conscious awareness. So this intelligence is self-recording, it's self-impressing. Now, some would call this conditioning. That's fine. You know, that may only be pointing to one aspect of it within the realm of, like, you know, language or conceptualization, so on and so forth. But there's energy, there's unresolved energy, there's unresolved emotion, you know. There's layers of things that are not just going to disappear through our saying that the one that they seem to be referential to isn't here. Now, it can seem like that's going on, and that's a whole vast subject in itself. But I would say that the seeming that is the case is actually a self-limitation, because it's through opening into the resolution of the residue of the illusion of separation and the illusion of limitation and the illusion of lack that we begin to really witness a greater richness and a greater blissfulness and a greater sort of flow within the field of awareness. But there has to be some willingness. There has to be some willingness to encounter that. And of course, you can always ask, well, who is willing? It's not like that, you know. There's just willingness. So there's willingness. There might be unwillingness. It doesn't mean that the willingness is better than the unwillingness. Doesn't mean that the unwillingness is wrong and the willingness is right. Okay. Nothing that I'm saying means anything within the realm of, you know, the illusion of right and wrong. Those are just dualistic positions of you know, a mind that is conditioned to separate that which is ultimately divisionless and inseparable and could never ever be altered by its fabrications. Yeah. So it's never about right or wrong, but we're committed to truth. There's a commitment to truth. It's not for someone. It's just truth committed to itself, flowing within itself, tasting the sweetness of itself, the fullness of itself, playing this miraculous game with itself, you know, and seeing that, yes, this is always what has been looked for whether it was known to have been looked for or not. You know, we can feel like we're looking here for this and looking here for that. And, you know, in the experience of this seeming lifetime, there was a lot of that, you know, within the realm of drug and alcohol abuse for many years, and relationships, and here and there, and whatever, you know. And the sense was, of course, that the seeking and the searching was going to provide some, you know, sense of feeling different. That's really what it was about. To feel the sober waking state of seeming separation was not pleasant. You know, from the age of, what, I don't know, 10 to 12, it seemed to really become very much unpleasant and noticeable to a strong degree, so much so that it demanded attention. It demanded some sort of this light's coming in here. Sweetie, could you come sit? Thank you. It demanded some sort of solution. Yeah, of course, it's an imaginary problem, but it still seems to be going on. And so solutions are sought. Yeah, that's the way that it goes. And through grace, which is always ever presently guiding, there's this recognition that it's right here, right in front of the face, right what is what this is, what our being is, what the truth of our self with a capital S, our own awareness actually is. So there
Andrew,
can be, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, thank you. That was beautiful. We have some questions coming in. I didn't want to enter. Sure. You want to finish that?
Yeah, I'll just finish my thought there, is that basically, you know, there can be commitment, there can be devotion without seeking. Yeah. So it doesn't have to come from seeking. It can come just from the naturalness of the inclination to give all that we seem to be to what actually is, to what we actually are.
Beautiful. Thank you. So we have some questions from YouTube, and then also here in Zoom. To Catherine Angel just says, thank you, Noel and Andrew. Fit and Fruchtig asks, how can someone tell if they aren't there anymore? Obviously, no one can know. I'm just not sure if I'm dead yet, though it really doesn't matter to anyone anymore.
Yeah, so that kind of relates to what I was speaking about in terms of what is it that is recognizing itself. Okay, there's two different aspects. There's the aspect of seeing what isn't here, but if that's not the whole picture, you might say, right? Because what is here? So you are not nobody. You're not somebody, but you're not nobody. Yeah, that's a new like identity, you know, to be nobody. We can go through a stage where it seems, you know, the wonderfulness of nobodiness. Yeah, we love it. We're walking around town. There's no one here. There's no one there. You know, it's like amazing, right? Beautiful. And it's just can be a very pleasant period. But at the same time, what is here? What is this? You know, and of course, you know, no word can touch it. That won't be it. But you can see for yourself what is here. So don't leave it at what seems to be the absence or the vacancy and the emptying out. Discover the fullness. Discover what is here. Yeah. And that's you. Not a you as someone, but the you that this speaking seems to be appearing to. That's you. But what is that you? It's not a body. It's not a mind. Not a separate individual. So what is it? Yeah.
Great, thank you. Glenn J says, self can't get out of self. Hooray, good news. All right. And then just some more love, some hearts, some sweets. John Luna says, I like that there can be devotion and commitment without seeking. I thought that was great as well. So Alongo has a question. I guess we're going to, Alongo, you're going to ask your question by video?
Yes. Thank you, Noel and Andrew. Yes. Am I audible?
Yes. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm from India. I've been a seeker for the last 30 years. And I would like to ask you personally with like, do you accept the term called as enlightenment in spirituality? Enlightenment.
Do I accept it?
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's a word, so it has the potential to be limiting, it doesn't have to be that way. I don't have a problem with it. So you could say I neither accept nor reject it.
Are you enlightened?
See, that's the thing. No body becomes enlightened. Enlightenment is an impersonal condition of reality realized within itself. And I would say that it is for the glory of reality, not for anyone to claim or own or say that they have achieved anything.
It's a bit abstract. Can we bring it down to day-to-day living?
So the condition then is one where the impersonal nature of reality is awake to itself as a continuous 24/7-ness, you might say, which is not in time, but appears to be within the play of time and space, without there ever actually being a substantial sense of time and space. So the difference then is only what seems to be one of recognition of what already is the case. So some may call that an enlightened condition. They may even say that that one is enlightened, in terms of some sort of perception of there being someone there that is different than what's here. Yeah? And, that's not going to stop, right? So there's no use in beating up words or making words into villains in that context. Words are words, They have the possibility of being more accurately aligned and more, how would you say, insightfully expressed and less. But that's also within... Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but as the teaching is being communicated through words, I just wanted more clarity because there is a lot of non-duality terminologies which are being interchanged by speakers. So I would like to sort of home on to what you're talking about. So you said impersonal reality, in which I mean is there the reality is divided into a personal reality and an impersonal reality. That is my first question. The second question is, which is realizing this inside me or inside you? If there is something called as realization, something should realize. That's the second question. The first question is there an impersonal and a personal reality? And what is reality?
So again, it comes back to semantics. It's easy enough to say, no, there's neither impersonal nor personal reality. There's only this. There's only what is. Even that's too much.
I can understand.
Even that's too much. Right. So at the same time, though, I don't feel that there's an issue with expressing within the realm of what seems to be the personal, what seems to be the impersonal, in the context of comparative, contrasting languaging. Because it doesn't have to be dualistic. It doesn't have to be something that's binding. It doesn't have to be something that is limiting, right? So the personal then would appear to refer to the sense of separation in this context. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, because there's also sort of impersonal personalities, like Lord Krishna or different things like that. So there's there's different levels of that, and there's different ways of expressing it.
Andrew, I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, you answer the first part in that, the difference between impersonal person doesn't really matter. It's more of semantics. I do understand that. And when you say this, I could understand as a seeker. The second part of the question was like, which understands this? Which part of me understands this? And before you answer that question, I just wanted to highlight to speakers that we are talking about non-duality, but the medium of communication by a speaker to a seeker is through language. And
Yes.
language per se by itself is always dualistic.
Yes.
It can never be non-dualistic. So there has to be some sort of a bridging using a non-dual communication to, a dual communication to communicate non-duality. So we have to be very careful with the words that we are using. The language by itself is duality. The moment I open my mouth, it's duality. It's only silence which can be non-dual. But all speakers and teachers are using the modem of the communication as language. So which in me is actually understanding this? Which part of me is understanding? Because I'm a bit confused as to which part of me is understanding all this.
So first things first, you're not divided into parts. So although there is verbalization, and I'm very, very much within the realm of expressing language and not too much concerned about controlling how it's perceived by apparent others. So those that would listen to what I'm saying may consider the teachings that are, or the speakings that are arising here to be rather dualistic, and that's fine with me, because it's more of the direct resonance in the heart, the one heart that you are right here, the one self that is speaking to itself right now.
What do you mean by the heart? Because medically, the heart means an organ which is pumping blood, which I think you don't mean. You actually mean.
No, I don't
mind.
mean that.
You mean the
By the
mind.
heart, I mean that which is borderless, boundaryless, immediate.
Consciousness.
I said heart. The pure knowing that tastes the pure knowing that tastes the fullness of itself.
Is it the human awareness?
No.
Being conscious of.
There is no human awareness.
But I am being aware of you talking to me. I mean, we call that awareness or we call that consciousness.
But it doesn't belong to a human. There is awareness. There is conscious presence. This is the light of what you are. You're the source of awareness.
You mean to say I am the source of the awareness? My brain?
You're the source. No, not that body. You.
You mean I am the universe? You mean like that? The primordial?
No. The universe is a very, very small piece appearing within awareness. You're the source of awareness.
By meaning awareness, are you meaning my five senses, my thinking, my...
No. This pure, silent, changeless razor of dimensionless perceiving that is the infinite non-local field of awareness. This awareness. Right here.
Can there be an awareness without the human brain? Because there are two theories about this. One is that the Indian system which says that in awareness everything happens. The brain is happening in awareness. Whereas there are other people who say no. Once the brain is gone, awareness goes away. After death, there is nobody. There is no awareness.
Yeah. The nervous system is the reflective, self-reflective vehicle that appears within awareness. But it's not limited. It's not limited to what appears to be the physicality of the brain. There's subtler levels.
So awareness is the awareness is me actually. I am awareness. Can I say that?
You could say that. Yeah.
And in my awareness, my body happens, my mind happens. Could I say that?
You could say that.
Okay. Now the question is, how do I get enlightened, or how do I get rid of this self in me?
Yeah.
According to your teaching, how do I do that? Is it possible? Is there a method?
Well, I don't know if you were listening, but grace is, of course, the primary principle, the primary factor. So it's not something that can be done by someone. And we could take the more radical negation-based perspective. There's no self for you to get rid of. There's no individual there for you to get rid of. And the false sense of you doing something to get rid of something would be linked to the false sense that there's someone there to get rid of. And so therefore there's no, there's nothing to do and there's no one to get rid of, and yeah, all that kind of stuff, right? That's wonderful. At the same time, there can be, certain natural, spontaneous expressions of alignment with insight, yes, which do not necessarily have to be linked to a seeking game based in the illusion of causality, and can just flow from the commitment to truth, the devotion to truth, the love of truth, the love of God, even. Who? Just love.
Can there be devotion without a devotee?
Yes.
Because you're talking about God. The moment God comes, a devotee comes, and there is devotion. It becomes three, not two. It becomes three.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't become three. It doesn't become two.
Now, generally, we think his devotion is towards somebody, towards a God, towards.
Right. That's the general understanding, but it's not necessarily the most accurate, nor is it what I'm speaking about.
Could you be more clearer in the sense, like,
yes,
what do you exactly?
Devotion right here, in this, to this, as this, flowing, diving deep into what appears to be the unknowing, which is the recognition of your reality as what always is.
I understand that very well. But the moment you bring it into language, the question pops up: recognition for who? Devotion for who?
Yeah. So then we can, we can do this all day.
Just go round and round. Yeah. I'm actually gonna get to some other questions. Ilongo, just for the record.
Sure. Thank you so much.
I have pitched us having a show where we don't say anything, but it keeps getting downvoted.
I mean, you're telling that. No, you're telling that I shouldn't be asking these questions, Noel?
No. I'm saying that we started the line of questioning saying that words are dualistic, and then and that's an agreed upon thing. And then when questions are asked using words, and there are these concessions made in the form of words to respond, those words are then used as tools to say, aha, this thing was said, and I need more explanation on these words, when there was already an agreement that the words are dualistic. And so we can go round
as
and
a
around.
Seeker. Yeah, but the thing is, Noel, I would like to place on record, we are coming here to a forum to understand from the speaker as to what is reality and life. And therefore, we are asking the questions. We are not using it as a tool for anything. There is only one purpose, is to understand the truth.
I totally understand, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with asking questions at all. It's just that we're starting to get cyclical in the approach of how they're asked, and there's other people that want to ask questions. That's really the reason. Yeah. That's really the reason I stepped in. But absolute respect for the questions and the answers that are coming up.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate your questions, Ilongo.
As dualistic as they are. So, okay, so Girish, we'll get to you in just a second. I'm going to ask a question in the chat here. Fully Empty says, there seems to be a growth, expanse, or increase in complexity of humanity. Do you think that humanity is moving in any kind of direction?
Well, that presumes that there is a humanity that's kind of fixed in there. And it, humanity is as was kind of stated in terms of complexity, is a seeming mixture of all kinds of different levels of conscious experiencing and interacting. At the same time, we can acknowledge a general sort of field or a general collective status. And yeah, there does seem to be some stirring in the collective as far as more initial shifts unfolding, which would be basically the recognition of there not being any separate individual entity, and other sort of interests. It doesn't necessarily link back to that direct insight, because that isn't necessarily going to unfold for everyone in that sense, and not everyone is interested in that even. And doesn't mean that if you're interested, then it's going to unfold, and if you're not, it's not, because there are those that weren't interested and it still became clear or shown forth, which is not a happening in time or space, and it doesn't happen to someone. So to answer your question succinctly, yes, I do feel that the collective is seeming to enter into what we could consider to be a new phase or a new stage of conscious experiencing. But within that, there are those that are going to be are going to notice that more, those that are going to notice it less, and those kinds of things. So it's not necessarily some headline. It's always been the case that things are evolving. It's the nature of creation, appearing to evolve. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. Girish, go ahead and unmute. I'm sorry if I hope I'm saying the name correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello everyone. Nice talk. As always, I like Nothing Media. Very nice people and beautiful souls. And Andrew, thanks for such a nice talk. I would like to share some my experience. When we lots of time said that we are a seeker, but for that non-duality or the experience of nothingness, we have to drop all identity. And when I say that I am seeker, there is also identity. And that time when the identity go, the seekerness, then we experience a nothingness and totalness, and it is very beautiful. But we are life. We are life. We are not part of life. We are life. It is beautiful. Just beautiful. Just live in present. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see. I have another question here. I have lots of questions. Let me see. A lot of statements too. Also, lots of hearts and love. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
All right. So it's a long one. This is from John Luna. The unfolding is not a sense of positive recognition. They go together. You are, and you know that you are. What we are, we don't know objectively. We know through being. It's the beliefs or assumptions of the what we are that are limiting. Nisargadatta said to stay with the feeling I am, the knowing. In my experience, that practice helped the knowledge know itself consciously in the midst of thoughts and activities and involvement. But this doesn't line up with some of the teachers that say nothing can be done. And I was wondering what Andrew's thoughts on this were.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of different teachers, and there's lots of different approaches, and there's lots of different, resonances, we might say, within the field of what appears to be active alignment with truth, or what could be considered seeking, or just devotion and interest. It doesn't have to be coming from a seekingness necessarily. So Nisargadatta, of course, was a great devotee, He came from a Bhakti lineage, Sampradaya, and his guru told him something. And because his guru told him something, he took it without question, because guru means God. And he applied it. Yeah. Yeah. And he held on to the sense I am, or what I would refer to as the sense of conscious presence, all the time, always. Yes. He also meditated, which some teachers would say, no, don't meditate. There's nothing to meditate on. It's not a good idea, whatever. I would say don't or do or whatever. It doesn't make a difference. And of course, there is no causal relationship. And holding on to the sense I am does not causally bring something about. But what it is an expression of a total coalescing of life within itself. And so it's not necessarily coming from what seems to be a separate someone that's going to do this to get that, right? It's the whole field emerging, and holding on to the sense I am is a natural blossoming of life. It's a natural flowering. Yeah. So I think it's wonderful if that's what someone feels resonant with. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So John said Andrew's a badass. So you got that going for you.
Well,
Nasaya says blessings. And Fully Empty says, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Andrew. Let me question from Walter. Walter, why do we need an identity? There's just been what's apparently happening all by itself. How can you take one slice out of everything and say, this is what I am? Seems like nothing appearing as everything here. And I am neither the everything nor the nothing. Neti leaves no room for you, or for a you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, why questions, don't really have an answer. So I generally, stay away from why questions, but we can play with it. That's fine. The question why in turn represents some sort of presumed function. So the answer will be teleological, meaning that it explains something in terms of its function, what it's for, its place, so on and so forth. The sense of limited identity has spontaneously arisen through the reflection of the infinite reality of I within a processing centrality, which has spontaneously appeared within its own creative flows of intelligence. Now, that could just be a bunch of hogwash and language and mean nothing, and it's just there coming out. That's fine, whatever. But that's an explanation that I feel is accurate as can possibly be within the realm of languaging. Now, I could be even more detailed there, and I often am in other presentations, but that's the shorthand of it, you might say. Does it serve a purpose? Is it for something in particular? Not necessarily. I mean, there's various perspectives. You could say that there's the joy, the wonder of the infinite appearing to conceal itself and then reveal itself. That's a nice perspective. I think that's beautiful. I like the perspective of the possibility of surrender being contained within what seems to be the sense of separation. And so there can be this tasting of the sweetness of life offering itself, giving itself to itself. Yeah. And realizing that it has always been itself.
Thank you. So another question from the chats. Actually, I've got two that basically are asking the same thing. So how... Sorry, I love these questions. They're so common, but I get it. I understand. How did you realize yourself? When and how did it happen?
Yeah, of course. So I didn't realize myself because I was never asleep and I was never ignorant and I never have been a person and I never have been in time or space. That's the simple answer. There appeared to be this play of seeming separation, seeming to be lost in the projections of dualistic processing, and there appeared to be the revelation of the unreality of what seemed to be real through the spontaneous presence of grace and the recognition or the realization of what has always been real, what has always been here, what has always been the field of truth within which names and forms have been seeming to spin. So it's a lila, if you will. It's a game. And it's also seeming. It's apparent. Within that seeming apparent game, there were certain things that naturally felt aligned and true. And these could be considered applications or practices by some. They don't have to be looked at that way. They're just ways of being more aligned with what already is, more or less aligned. And of course, we can say then, no, it's not possible to be more aligned with what already is, because anything is already what is, so therefore it's already aligned because that's what isn't. And that's all great. I really appreciate that kind of very, leaves very little room in that there's a functionality there. But at the same time, I don't feel that that's necessarily necessary, always. So there's other possibilities and potentials, and I describe and express those in the videos on the YouTube channel and on the website. So.
Thank you. So Unite Divide asks, from what source do you draw your claim of non-duality? And what if that force is made of many?
Okay, so I didn't catch the last part of, and what if that force
is made of many? I don't know if it's a typo, but what let's start with the first one. From what source do you draw your let's start with the easy one.
The first thing is I'm not there's no claim of non-duality as a personal sort of proclamation. Okay. Non-duality is a term which I feel has been sort of just kind of mixed about and used in so many different ways that it doesn't always necessarily mean the same thing, in the way that it's being used. So I consider this experiencing or this expression just to be basically standing on the shoulders of the great beings that appeared to precede this body. Anything that seems to arise here that may appear to be aligned with the direct insight into the nature of what already is through the power of divinity and the power of the grace of the one supreme reality that I always is. So the source is myself, and it's yourself. Actually, you're the source of what seems to be arising here.
Thank you. Puya asks, are we living in a simulation as human?
Yeah, that's kind of one way of looking at it. I think a more modern way of looking at this is kind of simulation-like, right? Because there seems to be three-dimensional formations and these suits, these meat costumes here that seem to be here, which are actually made of divine light. Everything is made out of a singularity, this one light, conscious awareness, ourself, if you will. So it is, I feel, an appropriate way of holding it and can be beneficial to look at it from a simulation perspective. No, it's not like a virtual thing that we're hooked up to computers or that there's some sort of computerized presentation of reality. If you take it that far, I would say it's inaccurate because this is the expression of the light of God, the light of divinity, the light of reality, the light of I.
Got it. Okay. I'm Girish and Ilongo, I'll get to you. I want to get to Walter first. Walter, can you unmute?
Oh, sorry. Am I coming through okay? Okay, great. Yeah, I'm just at work, so I thought I'd pop in for a quick question. I think my question was a little misunderstood. When I said why, I come across a lot of people that will insist that there's only one thing that I cannot say, and that's that I don't exist. And I think I hear you saying that as well. And then you are pointing to things such as awareness, or use the word the source. So if I can make this clear, if there's everything, or if there's nothing appearing as everything, how do you pick something out of that and claim that that's me or that's you? You know, what I mean is everything is just appearing spontaneously, naturally. Everything's happening all by itself without any need for an individual autonomous doer, something making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I get lost. You know, I was loving your talk, but then when identity started appearing, that's when I guess that's when I stopped resonating with certain speakers. And I try to engage, and they just insist that it's silly for me to say that I am not. They even say that that's the one thing I can't say. So I just wonder if maybe you could clarify that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Walter. No, we're actually saying the same thing. With maybe a couple. It's just a semantic thing, I think. So when I say I'm not referring to any kind of individual entity or autonomous doer or anything. I is sort of the verbal expression in the way that I'm using it of reality, which is formless, infinite, immeasurable, and you. Yes. Okay. So I would not say that nothing is appearing as everything. And there's various reasons for that. Just because I consider nothingness to be only a stage or only a certain recognition of reality. And that, of course, doesn't mean nothing in the limited sense of the term, like, this phone is here and now it's not here. It refers to infinite, formless reality. So the nothingness refers to that which is infinite and prior to the infinity of conscious awareness. So whenever I speak about conscious awareness, I'm speaking about this infinite field right here, which can be recognized as I initially, and I can actually be recognized as the source of conscious awareness at what I would consider to be a stage which comes after, or a recognition which comes after realizing that I is infinite everythingness or infinite conscious awareness. And everythingness, in the way that I'm using it, doesn't refer to all the little things put together. Yeah. Everythingness is the field of reality which is appearing as what seems to be individual things or items or objects, but there is no objectivity. There are no things. Yeah. They're only seeming. And I is what is seeming as the appearance of all the things. Yeah. Not I as Andrew, not I as an entity, not I as a doer or a speaker. I don't have any sense of being someone speaking right now. The words are just spontaneously flowing in and of themselves. They're flowing and appearing in this field of infinite everythingness, infinite subjectivity, infinite conscious awareness. So it may just be a semantic thing, just languaging. but I don't feel like we're too far off base as far as what you were expressing.
Okay. Thank you.
You good,
Thank you.
Walter?
I'm good. I'm just going to get back to work, and I'll keep listening. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Walter.
Thanks for your question, Walter. So I'm going to go to John Luna with the audio or video question, and then Ilango and Girish will get back to you. John, can you?
Yes. How you doing, Andrew?
Hey, wonderful. How are you?
Yeah, you know, I really enjoying the way you communicate. It's very clear and it's fresh. I had a question. You know, I hadn't heard of you before today, so I went over and checked out real quick your webpage, and I saw. I don't know if I quickly kind of came back over here, but there was a mention. There was something that you pointed to about talking about pain, contraction, in energetic contraction, nervous system contraction, things like that. And I had, my journey started with the Kundalini awakening, which I know that it's not really relevant now, but what it did create was a lot of difficulties in my nervous system. So, you know, it's rarely in a peaceful, you know, there could be a mental and emotional piece, but there's a sort of contractedness and a discomfort within the nervous system. So you had mentioned something about there being, I'll let you expand on about how you feel the best way to work with that is.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, that kind of goes back to what I was saying in terms of awakening and then what, you know, this kind of, the initial recognition, and then there's so much more depth, and there's things that are need to be processed out, you might say, or seeking to be processed out spontaneously, naturally. No one's doing it, it's just arising. Okay. So there's a couple different, you know, I use the term condensation because I feel that it's accurate and I like it. So, you know, condensated conscious awareness, and this whole, you know, play of form can be seen as a condensation, coagulation of conscious awareness within itself, we might say. And it's intelligent, it's guided, and it's, you know, evolutionary, apparently, at least from our perspective, within the human form. And so there's a certain level of condensation which is accumulated through the misperception within conscious awareness, and that's conscious awareness taking itself to be only a limited formation of its own intelligence. And there's condensation that is associated with what we could consider to be sort of the resistance to experiencing. Yeah. And that condensation is going to seek resolution or conversion. I look at it from a perspective of conversion or transmutation through the surfacing and attentive allowing of its appearance. So I'm not sure exactly what the details of your specific situation is. It's something that would need to be, I would feel, to be sort of addressed on a case-by-case basis. But generally speaking, whether it seems to be some sort of discomfort in the bodily appearance or the sensational presentation of what seems to be a body, or it appears to be a condensation, sort of emotionally charged energy that has surfaced within the context of daily life, the attention spontaneously is sort of placed on that seeming localized energetic presence, yeah, or that seeming energetic presence, and that could appear to be more or less localized depending on the condition. And as that attention is just sort of allowing that energy to be present, there's a simultaneous recognition of the infinity of ourself, if this is post initial shift. And from what you were saying, I'm kind of taking that it is, but if it's not, then the same principle applies, but maybe in a little bit of a different way. So if it's post initial shift, there's the simultaneous holding of our reality as this infinite field, or our reality sort of as without borders, and what seems to be the recognizable presence of the energy or the sensation that seems to be represented in the bodily appearance. And there's an attentive allowing of what seems to be the borders or any kind of boundaries or any sort of layering of experiencer and experienced to be just released. So there's typically a natural resistance to what arises. No one's doing that. It just happens on its own. It just is a natural resistance to what seems to come up. So, and that's in the context of emotion, sometimes thought, and different what seem to be physical sensation. So there's something that I refer to as the resistance release function. So as soon as we recognize that there is the presence of some sort of sensation or appearance, and that there's a resistance to that, in noticing that there's a resistance, an initial spontaneous resistance, the opportunity to attentively relax and release the resistance shows up. And so as we attentively relax and release the resistance to what's arising, then we sort of can witness the spontaneous dissolving of the conclusion, the processed conclusion that there's this experiencing this, and that this is here and this is going on here, and all of those different sort of contracted or condensated constructions. And then there may be another level of resistance that arises. And then again, the same thing. It's very much a repetitive intelligence.
Sort of like an onion being peeled back to layers
Yes,
of an onion.
yes. And in terms of these condensations, energetic condensation, I have a lot of videos on this, and it's something that I'm speaking about always in reference to what I call transmutation. Some of these condensations are very, very deep, and they even have collective roots. And so there's a progressive resolution of that energy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that's a great, what you said is excellent. And so, yeah, from here, this is a post-awakening experience. It's just there's like a no inside some of the pain. It sort of says no, you know, and it kind of there's some selfing around that happens,
right.
You know, and I can see it, but it's still, you know, the problem is the only little distinction, and I kind of know the answer, but I think I hear what you're saying, but unfortunately, there's times when I bring a little bit too much desire for something to leave and not enough detached. I know you're talking about being really, it's got to be like a detached attention, really.
Yes,
right?
yes, of course. It can't. So because it's coming from surrender, I'm glad you brought that up. Because the intelligence of it is not, I'm going to do this to get rid of this, you know. And I know when there's pain, that's not, you know, easier said than done, right? Because there's always that kind of sneaky motivation, right? Like I want to go back to feeling like, you know, light and free and expansive or whatever. All right, that's fine. But so then that can just be recognized as another level of resistance. So because you're already always underneath whatever seems to come up, you always already are able to recognize a triple layering of resistance, a quadruple layering of resistance. If you got a spiritual ego going on there, then you can have that come up because you shouldn't be wanting to get rid of it, but you still want to, but you shouldn't be, because now you're awakened. You should be surrendered, and you know, goodness gracious. So
it's recognition. It's recognition. You're talking.
Yeah, you're as soon as it's seen, because it arises in your seeing, then opportunity for the opening and the relaxation and the release. And it kind of comes back to which everything does, as far as I'm concerned, and what I'm saying is devotion. Because there has to be this real sincere commitment, not from anyone separate, but just a commitment to truth, you know, the commitment to be with what is, right?
Right. It's not just, you're not just chasing bliss. It's more of just to see to allow what is really.
Yes,
to just be with what,
exactly. Commitment to reality and surrender to reality. Yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for your question, John. That was great. So Elongo, we'll go to you with a video question.
Yeah, thank you, Noel, for bringing me back. And Andrew.
Yes.
We were talking last, and before I continue that dialogue, I just wanted to ask you, what is your concept of free will versus destiny?
So I don't see it as an either or kind of thing within the context of free will or predestination. There's probability and likelihood. Things are spontaneously actualizing within this field of conscious awareness. There's a certain self-recording, self-impressing intelligence, which is operative. And that is what we refer to as, conditioning, the collection, the conglomeration, the accumulation of conditioning. Some have called it karma, whatever the case may be. And I'm not talking about some false cause and effect idea of karma. That's nothing at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a natural intelligence of conscious awareness, which is spontaneously self-recording and self-impressing. So within that, there's the probability or the likelihood that something will seem to actualize, that I'll seem to go this way instead of this way, right? That doesn't mean that it's predetermined. It just means that there's a certain degree of likelihood that I probably will go that way, but it can always be that that's not it, and it goes this way. So it's not predetermined. It's freely flowing. The thing with the whole free will thing, which I don't even usually get into it because people really go just crazy with it, is that it's not personal will. Just because things are freely flowing, it doesn't mean that it's personal will. Like, that's a confusion of languaging. There's no personal will. But there is free. It's free. It's not, you don't have to do this. It's not like things could go this way. You know what I mean?
Are you meaning there is only God's will?
Yeah. That's a whole different subject, isn't it? I don't know if that's the most helpful perspective either. It could potentially be, it's all according to the context along go. So you're asking some pretty general questions, and I may give different answers for these questions depending on who's listening. You know what I mean? At a certain point, it may be appropriate for someone to feel like they have a choice here. You know what I mean? At another point, it may be appropriate for me to say, no, that's stupid. You don't have a choice. You're just deluding yourself. So I can't just generalize. Any true teaching is coming spontaneously according to what the listener is relevantly recognizing. Yeah. And it's not that there's a God that has a will. So we could say that, I would say, God's will is love. And those things which are not in alignment with love, seemingly, not actually, are not really in alignment with God's will, if we want to take that perspective. Yeah. That's my sense of it.
And what is love according to you then? Since you're bringing in love, one of the most confused words.
Yeah, I understand. So love then is not something that is done by someone. Love doesn't go from here to there. Love is not traveling distance. It is not located in space and time. It is not something that can be conjured up. Love is the reality that is shining as all that is. Love is divinity. Love is what you are.
And another thing which I picked up was you're speaking to one of the seekers who was asking questions. You said that this reality, or the I am of what's coming through every human being, is infinite. That is the reality. Now, this is actually reflected in the Indian spiritual Vedic system, where we call it the Brahman, and that shines through you. Is that a correlation I can fall upon? That what you are saying is there is only one reality, not two. There is only one reality. What speaks through me is actually that reality. What speaks through you is only that reality.
Yes, but there's still degrees of what appear to be greater or lesser concealment. So there's, the speaking could be attempting to serve the illusion of separation, or the speaking could be inspired and arising from the flow of divinity in its movement to recognize itself or realize itself. You see? So it's not that just whatever is, sometimes I hear this message that everything is that freedom and everything is just the same and all this stuff, but that's not really helpful. I mean, that's not, it's kind of like saying that Nisargadatta, sitting with Nisargadatta and listening to his teaching is the same as like beating your wife or something like that. Like it's it's the same essence that's appearing as that, but these are not there's different tonalities within the appearance of experiencing This one is egoically dominated, egoically stratified, based in the illusion of separation, unresolved energetic condensation. This one seems to be in the flowering of the potentiality of this infinite reality within itself, more aligned with that. So there's what appear to be greater or lesser degrees of alignment with truth.
And you're talking about divinity forgetting itself. Was there a reason, and why and how?
So divinity
Then
never
it
forgot
remembers
itself.
it back.
Yeah, divinity doesn't forget itself. It's an appearance. Yeah, divinity is never asleep. Divinity is the source of conscious awareness. What seems to take place is that there's a concealment within conscious awareness. Divinity is not separate from conscious awareness. Divinity is shining as conscious awareness. Conscious awareness is infinite, just like divinity. So it's like the sun and its light, if you will. They're not two, yes, but there appears to be sort of a qualitative distinction. One is the source, one is that which is emanating from the source. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Then how did the concealment happen in this divinity and conscious
Okay,
awareness?
all
Was
right.
it part
So
of
the concealment, that's right. Thank you. Okay, you reminded me. How? That's a long story. You might want to come to I've got a webinar on Sunday where I'm kind of going into that more detail. But the how, not everyone's interested in that. So that's nice that you are interested in that, I guess, maybe, as long as it doesn't become an obscuration. Yeah, that's a very detailed process, but essentially there's what I refer to as the whim, or what has been classically referred to as the whim of divinity, or the brief musing. This musing is what seems to be the seeming withdrawal of divinity or forgetfulness of itself as what appears to be the infinite qualityless totality of nothingness. Contained within that is inert, inactive awareness, which is activated by that same whim, which becomes conscious of itself. So now awareness is not just inertly inactive, it's consciously awake to its own nature. That's an infinite field of flowing subjectivity. Within that, there's the actualization of its own potentiality into what appears to be an infinite multiplicities of formation. And right now, and this is all guided by a centralization principle known as egoity. So the centralization principle appears to guide the actualization of the potentiality of this one infinite divine mind, if you will. It's the mind of divinity, the light, the self, the one self, the Atman. Yes. And that is expressing itself as the appearance of these words right now. This is the actualization of that potentiality.
Another thing I wanted to ask you was, Andrew, like when somebody asked you a question, it looked like you were born with a shift, right? And in the middle, you sort of lost it and it came back. When somebody asked you, when were you enlightened? You said there was never a question of enlightenment to me. You said, I mean, I was always aware and I was not stupid.
Yeah, but see, I wasn't speaking as Andrew.
I understand.
Yeah. So the same thing is true for you. You have never been ignorant.
Okay. Before the next question, just out of inquisitiveness, your language, has a lot of scientific background. Are you a scientific professional?
No, I'm not a scientist. Lord, no. I didn't graduate high school. I've got a GED.
Okay, because you were talking about this condensation, and and in one of your, I think in your Bad Gap interview, you talk about a word. I just wanted to ask you, because it's really high-flung genetics. You say about mutation and I will forget the word mutation and contemplative supplication. Contemplative supplication.
Yes, contemplative.
And it's your word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So
mutation and contemplative supplication. What does that mean?
Okay, so those are different pillars of what I put forward as possibly being more in alignment with the recognition of reality and the status of infinity, and also the continued unfoldment of the sort of unification and integration of conscious experiencing within that recognized or realized infinity. So pillar number 2 is contemplative supplication, and pillar number 3 is transmutation. And these are distinct modalities of spontaneously self-actualizing intelligence, which are appearing through the power and the grace of this one reality within its own mind, and are supportive of not only the initial shift in identity, which is recognizing that our identity is infinite and that we're the only ones here, but also of different qualitative shifts within that recognition of infinity, and also the refined reflection of that reality within the appearance of the human nervous system, so that we are not just sort of acting out of old baggage you know, and saying, oh yes, there's no one here, and that's fine because there's no one here, and it's just this stuff. Not that stuff isn't going to come up. There's no right or wrong. There's no duality. It's not a problem. It's not me. It's not personal. All that kind of stuff. But there's the potential that we can more clearly reflect the truth of what we are in terms of what seems to be this apparent humanity. And so that includes the resolution of those impressions and that condensation that was accumulated through the illusion of separation, which is not going to disappear just because we see that there's no one here in the way that there seemed to be.
So this all happens automatically.
It's spontaneous. You may feel like there may be someone that feels like, oh, I'm actively participating. Yes, I'm willing. I'm stepping into this. That doesn't mean that that's actually going on. At what seems to be another point, it'll be recognized. No, it was always spontaneous. It was always actualizing in and of itself. It was always this one totality intelligently flowing within itself. But it might seem that there's credit taking going on. It might seem that someone is saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to whatever. Yeah.
Longo, I love that you asked. You asked if you had a scientific background, because Andrew, when I think one of the first videos I saw, you used to be up at the whiteboard talking to people, and I love that. I love that aspect of it.
I think amongst the speakers, I think he has the highest scientific jargon, though he has not gone to a science, something very different. One of those miraculous things. So, Andrew, are you saying that we can do nothing to get what we want? It's like it's going to happen just by the grace of divinity. That's it.
It's not
It may appear I'm coming to Andrew's talk, or I'm listening to Andrew's videos and I get enlightened. It may appear to be, but that is not the case.
There's no causal relationship. That's right. There's no causality. So if you take it outside of the realm of causality, then it's basically what seems to be in alignment with grace and the witnessing of the unfoldment of grace within itself. Grace isn't something that's going to happen. It's not something that's going to come. It's not in time or space. It's right here. This is it.
How do you talk about this cause and effect, which is actually a very integral part of physics? Because in day-to-day life, I have to switch on my computer at a certain time to come to FM to listen to you, which looks like
you don't have to feel like that's cause and effect. The computer can get turned on, the bowl of cereal can get poured, the coffee can get made without feeling like there is a cause and effect mechanical relationship taking place. That is not a prerequisite for things to seem to arise. That is one of the major misconceptions, is that there's a conditioned belief system that somehow cause and effect keeps things going. It doesn't. One-to-one causation is not going on, period. I mean, even within the realm of what seems to be the conditional paradigm. Yeah.
And Andrew, a lot of speakers, especially from Tony Parson, a lot of speakers who speak about nothing, talking to nobody, they talk about the dissolution of the me energy. What is your take on that? There is a me energy.
My take on that is it's not just like that. You know what I mean? There's different layers and levels to the energy that is associated with limited identification that is known as me, But yeah, there's the seeing through, that's the kind of what is classically referred to as awakening or non-awakening or whatever you want to call it, where the sense of there being a separate individual me seems to not be anymore. And you see that it never was and all of that. But you see that very thing implies that there's some sort of like happening, that's going to happen. But that's inaccurate. It's not like that at all. It's not in time and space. You're not in time and space. And you're seeing what's already here, not in time and space.
But you're I think you're in America now. I'm in India.
Yes.
Well, how do you explain that?
What?
Internet.
I don't experience you as being in India. You're right here.
Yeah.
Right here, this here-ness appearing to dynamically interact with itself in this here-ness. So you could say India is here, and I could say America is here, but the here is not India. It's not America. India is here. America is here. This body is here. That body is here. What is this here? Is there distance here?
There is no distance here.
Yes.
So coming back to this me energy, was this a language bug which was given by the society, by my mother, father? They called me as Ilango.
No. That's blame, right? Yeah. Then we got people to blame because it was.
That is what Tony Parsons says.
Well, I'm not.
That is what a lot of. I know. I'm just referring, an authority in non-duality who says it was through language.
I'm an authority now, huh? That's what you're saying, right? The only authority is the reality of divinity, period.
Alongo, with your permission, I'd like to go to someone else. Is that okay?
Yeah,
all right, thank you. Thank you so
That's
much.
okay, yeah.
Thank you, Alongo.
Thank you.
Girish, you're up next.
Hello.
Hey.
Andrew, I have one question. We are all actually in spirituality. Just one question that after your realization, like now I also, how's your day-to-day life? Just little curiosity. how you live your day-to-day life? Yeah, how you look your life? Yes. Just share with us little.
Yes, of course. Well, of course, it's the sort of basic disclaimers that I don't live daily life. Another interesting point is that the sense of being someone that is inside of a day or that is waking or dreaming and sleeping has been resolved. So there's no sense of passing through days or any sense of being in a week or a month or a year. That's not here anymore. And what spontaneously seems to appear within this infinite field of divine light is this body is utilized as the vehicle for the expression and reflection of itself within itself. There's what seems to be eating, walking, sitting. I enjoy apparently to smell different essential oils, sometimes incense, burn incense. These are things like that. I'm married, and this all appears to be going on. The major sort of potency of what is appearing is that it's utilized in the direction of perpetual resolution. So basically, these 4 pillars that I've briefly mentioned in this talk, which are observation, contemplative supplication, transmutation, and service, are what replace the sense of a personal someone living life. And so now what seems to be the day is basically the reflective intelligence of conscious awareness surfacing and resolving unresolved material on what seems to be more of an individuated level and a collective level. And there is a perpetual flow of devotion, which has now taken more of a lyric play, so that there is, an altar and different things in the morning. And there is, what I would consider to be the infinite possibility for the refinement of love and the reflection of love and the revelation of love in reality. And experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For sharing.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Girish. So Nikki says, beautifully not said, LOL. Thanks, Andrew. Elijah Rappaport, can you speak about trauma and how to address that?
Yes. So I tend to not use the word trauma for several different reasons, because one of the main things with the word trauma is that it kind of can have negative connotations, and it also can sort of just slightly imply that something traumatic has happened and there's some sort of cause and effect sort of implication there, right? There's some sort of cause and effect assumption that could potentially be there, not always, and there's some great expressions of intelligence that sort of surround the field of what they would consider to be trauma work, quote unquote, that, you know, kind of take it outside of that limited understanding. So trauma then, I would recontextualize or rephrase as energetic condensation or impressions within conscious awareness. And for that, basically there are certain spontaneously self-actualizing modalities which support the resolution of that unresolved energy, that support the resolution of those unresolved impressions. And so it comes back down to the intelligence of attentive allowing of the surfaced material within awareness that is being reflected back within the flows of what seems to be daily experience. So through our commitment to truth, which does not belong to a separate individual entity, it's spontaneous, it's here, or it's not, and it doesn't matter, it's not right or wrong, good or bad, okay? What begins to take place is that devotion, that commitment allows or invites even that unresolved material to start to surface and to start to reflect back through the experiencing. Yeah. And as it is reflected back, as it is brought into the field of attention, meaning that we consciously, attentively recognize that this seems to be here, then it is allowed. The resistance that spontaneously arises to that material is released. And so there's this, what could be deemed as a timeless, perpetual flow of resolution that is also progressively supported by and cushioned by the lively fullness of blissfulness, bliss, so that the conscious awareness is sort of enlivened through the resolution of that energetic layering, and it's converting that material. So it's not just getting rid of it, which would be actually recondensating it and trying to get rid of it. It's actually being restructured or reimpressed. It doesn't matter whether you feel like a separate individual or not. That's what's going on, because the mechanism is still based in the illusion of control. Yeah. So basically, the release or the resolution of all of that residue is based in the release of the illusion of control and the willingness to be with what is arising for as long as it takes. That means whole lifetime, 200 lifetimes, whatever. Okay, there's no lifetimes. I'm expressing a point about willingness. Yeah. So it's the willingness to be with something forever, because the reason that it's being re-traumatized or recondensated or re-impressed is because there's a pushing it away. There's a trying to control it. There's a writing it off because it's referential to a personal entity that's not here, and it's okay because there's no one here and this isn't mine. And, you know, and that's all innocent. That's not wrong, but it's about facing what is surfacing to be faced. And for its own sake, not so we can get to a point where nothing's coming up. Because as we don't feel like we are someone that has a life that's separate from the whole, then we don't feel like we want our life to look a certain way anymore, necessarily. I mean, that could potentially still be there. It just depends on the case. There's also all kinds of, there's mechanics with the spiritual ego, what I call the spiritual ego, which would be like the awakened, realized ego, or the nobody ego, or whatever. Egoic identification. The ego itself is not an issue at all. It's just a processing system, processing centrality. So within the realm of trauma, it's a vast understanding, which, but basically it boils down to attentive allowing with the heart of willingness and the commitment to face and resolve that which remains to be faced and resolved for its own sake, out of the love, out of the love of reality. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we're getting close to wrapping up. Does anybody have any more? If you have any more video questions, please raise your hand and we'll get to those. Andrew, can you? You mentioned you have a webinar this Sunday. What else do you have? We'll put a link in the description, but it's nondual-devotion.com for everyone, but what else do you have?
Yeah, so
coming
this
up?
Sunday is actually the second part of what I would consider to be kind of, I labeled it as advanced, but it's more it's explanation and things. So maybe not everybody be into that right away. And I am using a virtual whiteboard now, Noel. So I got one of those things you can draw on. But Saturday we have a program on pleasure, and where does pleasure fit into this whole thing? You know, what's the place of pleasure in non-dual unfoldment? And we have a non-dual prayer that's every Tuesday morning. We meet and we just fold our hands and sit in silence together and just allow the totality of our being to fold into itself in a prayerful, devotional way. And that's 30 minutes. And then every Thursday we have a leading style, which is where there's a direct speaking to the reality of this field in sort of an energetically resonant way, which is supportive in various aspects. And then we typically have every month we have a 3-day or a 5-day sort of deepening, what we call a devotional deepening. So, I would encourage everyone to explore the YouTube to make sure that, because I'm sort of attuned to the audience that has been spoken to here, and so there may have been, I may have sort of expressed things in a little bit more of a different way than I usually do. So I would definitely check out the videos on YouTube to make sure that you really feel that it's something that you resonate with. Yeah.
That's great. And the way you speak about it is the reason that we invited you here. So we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Yeah,
Noel.
of course. Okay, so I'll go ahead and stop the recording and I'll stop the stream. But Andrew, Hewson, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Noel. Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it. Thank you.